He paid 2 pence halfpenny to the slattern girl. He paid 2 pence halfpenny to the slattern girl, and went out of the shop to begin his wandering again. 2 pence his wandering again. Slattern, dirty and untidy. Slightly. He paid 2 pence halfpenny to the slattern girl, and went out of the shop to begin his wandering again. He went to Capel Street and walked along towards the City Hall. Then he turned into Dam Street and the corner of the George's Street. At the corner of the George's Street, he met 2 friends of his and stopped converse with them. He was glad that he could rest from all his working. His friends asked him, had he seen Curly, and what was the last? His friends asked him, had he seen Curly, and what was the last? He replied that he had spent the day with Curly. His friend talked very little. They looked vacantly. There are some vacant offices on the third floor. They looked vacantly after some figure in the crowd. After some figures in the crowd, they looked vacantly after some figures in the crowd, and sometimes made a critical remark, and they looked vacantly after some figures in the crowd, and sometimes made a critical remark. One said that he had seen Mark an hour before in Westmoreland Street, in Westmoreland Street, in Westmoreland Street, in Westmoreland Street. At this, Linehan said he had been with Mark the night before in Agnes. The young man who had seen Mark in Westmoreland Street asked, was it true that Mark won a bet over a billiard match? Over a billiard match. Linehan did not know. He said that Holohan had stood them drinkings in Agnes. He said that Holohan had stood them drinkings in Agnes. He said that he turned to he paid suddenly. He paid 20 pennies to Curly. He said that Holohan had stood them drinkings in Agnes. Had stood them in Agnes. He left his friends at 10:15. He left his friends at 10:15 and went up George's Street and went up George's Street and went up George's Street. He turned to the left at the city markets. He turned to the left at the city markets and walked on into Grafton Street. The crowd of girls and young men had thinned and on his way up the street, he heard many groups and couples bidding one another good night, bidding one another, bid bidding one another good night. Bidding. He went as far as the clock of the College of Surgeons. It was on the stroke of 10. It was on the stroke of 10. Stroke of 10. A quarter to 10. A quarter to 10. And stroke of 10. He set off briskly along the northern side of the green, hurrying for fear Curly should return too soon. Hurrying for fear Curly should return too soon. When he reached the corner of the Marion Street, he took his stand in the shadow of the lamp. He took his stand in the shadow of the lamp and brought out one of the cigarettes which he had. He took his stand in the shadow of the lamp and brought out of the cigarette which he had reserved and lit it. He leaned against the lamp post and keep his gaze fixed on the part from which he expected to see Curly and the young woman return. He leaned against the lamp post. He leaned against the lamp post and kept his gaze fixed on the part from which he expected to see Curly and the young woman return. Curly and the young woman return. Bead, thin, seeming, seemed, had sinned. The crowd of girl and young men had thinned. Figures after some figures in the crowd. He looked vacantly, figure, slatternly,